Hey, game makers, let's talk about killing stuff. I've got a very basic kind of skeleton platformer, action platformer project here. And I can move, I can jump, sort of, and I can stab. So I've got a little target dummy pig dude over here, and I can stab at him, but it doesn't do anything. So let's make it do something. We're going to be applying some of the principles I talked about in my collisions video. There's a couple of ways we can do this, and I'd like to go over both of them just so that you understand your options when doing this sort of collision checking. So we're going to do first a mask swap. So we're going to take the character, and while they're attacking, we're going to swap their mask out to something specific to the area of their stabby sword, and then swap it back to their normal collision mask for world collision, platforming, and stuff like that. So let's do that and see if we can get this guy at least acknowledging that he has been hit. So to start with, let's look at our sprites. So if I open up dude here, we got dude stab, and he's got two little animations there, and an origin and everything, so it's all lined up. So we're going to duplicate this. Control D, boom, sprite dude stab, and we're going to call this mask. Ugh, I hate that. Okay, mask. And then I'm going to edit this guy. And I don't need this. And I'm just going to add another layer here. Boop. And I'm going to draw a big red rectangle over his blade. Make it a little bit longer, just a little bit taller, a little bit wider, to give the player some leeway. And then we're going to delete that. I believe Sean Spalding did something similar to this in his melee attack tutorial that's pretty old at this point, but the principle is still the same. We're going to swap out the mask while collision checking for the pig, and use this mask to check for collisions on very specific frames. So let's go do that. So I'm going to switch over to my scripts, my states, player stab. So here in the stab state, using true state here, as usual, and here in the stab state, I've managed the animation not by letting the animation just play using image speed. I've turned off the image speed, I've reset the image index, and then based on the current time I've spent in this state, I do stuff. So after, the first sprite in the animation is the wind up. So I let him wind up for about 10 frames, then he stabs for about 5 frames, so from 10 to 15. And then and then after 15, he goes back to the wind up, so he's got kind of a recovery state for about 10 frames before switching back to idle. So in this manner, we could say as long as we're in image index 1, we can be checking for collisions. So the way we want to do that is we're just going to change my mask index. Oh, haha, there. I did that backwards. I always do that. Sprite dude stab, mask 1. We just want to go back to this guy, sprite dude stab. Little switcheroo there. Okay, so we're going to change our mask index to sprite dude stab mask, and we're going to go back to his normal mask, which should be, now that I look at this, we probably want to keep this mask the same, or at least the same as, because I don't have a static mask on this guy right now, which is probably a bad idea. Yeah, same as sprite, not a good idea. Don't want to do that. We're going to say same as dude walk. Let's make sure that didn't break anything. Well, it would right now. Hold on. Let's go back to our script. Yeah. So mask index, sprite dude mask. We're going to check collision here. And then we're going to set our mask index back to what it was before, which is sprite dude stand. Another way we could do this is var mask equals mask index. And we could just go back to mask. There's a million ways to do this. So we'll do it that way. That'll be more reliable. And if we change our mask over in the object, we don't have to come back and change it in all of our states. We'll just go back to the previous one. So collision checking. Pretty simple. We're just going to say if place meeting x, y, object, target dummy. And we're just going to confirm that we hit. So show message, hit the pig. That's all we need. So run this. We can still move around. We can still stab. No message. There we go. Hit the pig. Simple enough. So that's one way to do it. The advantages are that was really simple to set up the mask. It's very simple to adjust this, come in here, and update the mask. The problem is if you want this to extend a little bit further or like go outside the bounds of the attack for whatever reason, which isn't necessarily unreasonable. Sometimes we extend masks beyond the animation by quite a ways just to give the player a little bit of an advantage. It just helps make the game feel a little bit better. It's going to automatically flip. So as we change our image X scale, in fact, let's double check that real fast. As we change our scale, as we flip from left to right, oh, see, there's a problem right there. It did not respect it. So let's fix that. Why didn't it respect it? It should have respected it. Mask index, sprite dude stab mask, image X scale. Is it the pig's mask that's weird? Hold on, try that one more time. I love these kind of little issues. It's just like, this should work. Why doesn't this work? Yeah, he just doesn't work at all when facing. Okay, it looks like it's just out of alignment. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into the draw state. We're going to figure out what's going on. Because this happens sometimes. We're just going to draw his mask over this. So I'm going to use I've got a little function I've built. So you might, if you've ever used draw sprite extended, right? I'm going to type this out because it's really annoying. So I want to draw sprite dude stab mask, right? Not druid, dude stab mask. And I want to do 0, and I want to do X, Y, image X scale, because that's really what, well, oh, that's a good point. There it is right there. I'll keep going with this, but the problem is we're not drawing dude with image X scale. We're using just X scale, I believe, or like his face direction, face steer, I think, something like that. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so we're using a face steer. So we'll have to update his image X scale as well as his mask. So there's another point kind of against this method, is that we'll have to mess with the image X scale, which can be scary, but shouldn't be a big deal in this case. Let's draw the mask out anyway. So X scale, image Y scale, since we are still using that, image angle, image blend, image alpha, and you have to do this every time you try and use draw sprite extended. It's a pain. I hate it. So I wrote another script. It's called draw self extended, and it comes pre-built with all of the default variables. So I don't want to use sprite index. I'm going to say sprite dude stab mask. And then, yeah, I want to use that image XCL. Yeah, I want to use that X and Y and face steer. And then everything else is default. So now we don't need to do that. So let's see if that works. Okay. Oh, well, this is the player is the parent of the target dummy, so they both have collision mask now. So we can see, yeah, that lines up. So we can put this right over him, boom. And we could put this right over him, boom. One thing you might notice is that the character stabs once when it's working, right? He only stabs for one frame, and if the pig isn't there in that one frame of his stab animation, it's not going to hit him. We can fix that later, but for now, we're good. So we know what the problem is now. We aren't using face direction. So let's go fix that. I should just open up this state as a separate. Okay, so we also need to do xscale equals face steer. And then we'll do the same thing here. Image xscale equals xscale. We are checking collision. Then image xscale equals xscale. So we'll just reset it back. Now we should be working. Boom, hit the pig. Perfect. Okay, so we are detecting collision based on the mask. So let's use the other way of doing it just so that we understand our options. So I'm going to comment all this out for now. And we're going to create a new object. And this is going to be our object sensor. So we're going to need a sprite for this, which, let's see, I prefer sprite. Okay, this is going to be our sprite, basic mask. So sometimes when I'm making just basic shapes and, for very specific purposes, I like to describe them in the name a little bit more in depth than I normally would, right? Instead of just like square, because I'm going to make a square, right? There's going to be a, let's say 16 by 16, and with the origin in the left center. Okay, so let's build that. That's going to be a 16 by 16. Origin is going to be in the left center, middle left. Okay, fine, middle left, whatever. That's fine, it's fine. Okay, I'm going to fill that in. There we go. So now we've got this very basic shape that we can manipulate, and we're going to assign that shape to object sensor. And that's it. That's all object sensor is going to be. Oh, we are going to change our mask just to be safe. We shouldn't need this, but I do like to say rectangle with collision or with rotation. Always a good thing to have. Okay. So now we're going to go back to our sprite dude stab state. And instead of changing his mask, we're going to use our sensor object. This is going to be a lot of code up front, but then we can turn this into a script and make it really easy to work with. So let's do that. We're going to say if not instance exists, object sensor, then create it. Doesn't matter where we create it, so we're just going to create it 0, 0, 0. Because we're going to reposition it right here. So we're going to take control of object sensor, and we know there's only one of them, so we can go ahead and use object sensor to access it instead of having to get the instance ID. And we are going to move it to our x. So object sensor.x equals x. object, and we're definitely going to be changing these positions later. So sensor.y equals y, object sensor dot image x scale equals, so here we can say how long do we want this thing to be, right? So if we say like 32 pixels, then we'd want the image x scale to be 2. So I'm going to say 32 pixels divided by sprite get width, object sensor dot mask index. Okay, and then same with the height. Dot image y scale equals 16 maybe. Divided by sprite get height, object sensor dot mask index. Okay, so we've got a position, we've got an x, and we've got a y. That's not going to look right, but we can at least mess with it right now. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that is very wrong. Why is that so wrong? Didn't expect that to be so wrong. Did I get my math backwards? Sprite get width divided by, no? 32 divided by object sensor mask index, which should be 16 by 16. 32 divided by 16 is 2? So his image x scale should just be 2. Why is it so big? And then 16 divided by 16 is 1. This is only 16 by 16, right? I did resize it? Yeah, I did. Okay, let's make it really small and see if that fixes it. That is weird. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing with my life? Okay, just for my own sanity, this should be 2 and 1, right? Okay, so my math is just like stupid wrong. This is mask index. No, this mask index should be fine. 16 by 16. Yep. I wish Control T or Control Tab would take you back to the tab you were actually on, not just to the object that's a parent of the tab. That'd be cool. I hate stupid problems like this. 32 divided by 16 is 2. 16 divided by 16. So apparently I'm not getting the width and the height that I want, right? So let's do this. Let's do a little bit of debugging because this is stupid. Whoops. Sprite get width, sensor dot mask index. Let's just start with that one. Okay, we'll do width, and we can set a breakpoint right here. So we're expecting the width to be 16 by 16. Okay, we hit our breakpoint. Width is -1. Mask index is never -1. Wait. It kind of seems like a bug to me. It's returning -1. There's no way that's -1. So if I go like this, right? If I go like this, sprite index, is this going to give me what I want? Because mask index and sprite index should be the same right now. 16. That's a bug. There's no way that's supposed to work that way. I feel a little vindicated. I guess we'll just use sprite index for now. Okay, that's fine. Whatever. Okay. There we go. Okay. Now you'll notice it doesn't flip and it's at his feet. So we need to reposition it further. So our image X scale is 32, but we also need to take into account his face steer. So now that'll flip. And let's move it around. So this is where things aren't necessarily ideal. You can spend a lot of time doing this. Once you've got it set up, you don't ever have to touch it again per state, but still kind of annoying. So, but these are your options. I've used this method a lot, and I've found it to work pretty well for me, so bear with me. So let's go look at Sprite Dude's stab. Okay, so if we go to frame 2, actually let's open this up in the image editor. So his origin is approximately right here. It's right by his back left foot. Okay, so if we were to kind of draw a rectangle up here to the middle of his sword, that selection area is 47 by 22. So we need to move this collision mask up 22 and to the right 47. And I was looking at that. Let me do that again for you real fast so you can see where I was looking. Down there in the bottom middle, like right below his feet in the little help bar, you can see selection area is 50 by 22, which I like that number better. Let's use 50 by 22. I'm going to go back to object and then scroll over because this is stupid. So we're going to say x minus 22, or no, x plus 50, right? Y minus 22. Okay, so we're getting some magic numbers here, right? Let's talk about magic numbers. Typically not a great idea, but you can see I've actually got quite a few of them. I've got image index equals 1, and then down here image index equals 0, case 15, case 25, case 10, and then 50, 22, 32, 16, hike. I don't have a problem with this right here. I think it's pretty clear what I'm doing. And once I scriptify this, a lot of these will be even more clear based on the type of argument I'm passing. But ultimately, we are configuring player state stab. Could I go through and add a whole bunch of vars that say, you know, stab X off, stab Y off, stab width, stab height? Yeah, I could. And then, you know, I could have stab, the length of each stab and like add them together and get or each frame of animation in the stab and add them together to get rid of all these magic numbers. That's totally fine. I could go through and do that. I'm not going to do that because I understand just by looking at these what they are. But do what makes you comfortable, I guess. All right, so we've offset it, we've flipped it. Let's see how that lines up now. Well, you'll notice that it looks great on right, not so much on the left. And that is because we also need to take that into account here. So we're going to flip the X as well when we're facing left. There we go. Now we're stabbing. So it extends quite a bit past. So here's one of the advantages. Now that I've got this, I don't have to open the sprite editor. I can just say, you know what, 32 is a little long. Let's go back to 25 or something. There we go. That's just a pixel past where he was. And then I could say, I don't like that. I feel like that should hit him too, right? It's like that's so close to hitting him, it should hit him. So now, again, instead of opening up the sprite editor, I can say, you know what? Let's not move him very far off. Let's take that 50 and add it to our width and take it off this. In fact, let's take it off completely, which means we don't need the face steer anymore. We're just going to move it to X. Boom. So now the entire kind of, he pulls it back to here and then stabs through here. So this entire motion will technically be collision for checking. So that's one of the advantages of this method is you have a lot of control. It can seem like a bit tedious. It's a lot easier to just open up a sprite and draw, but it's not it's not a bad method for sure, especially when you have multiple frames of animation, you need them all to work. Yeah, it's you can also rotate this dynamically for like a top-down game. Like you can think Link to the Past, where Link can like spin his sword around. You could either do a circle collision mask, or you could do a nice rotating collision mask and really get that feel like if he's hitting a guy on the right and then on the left, they get knocked back at different times and gives his sword a lot more weight. So it has its advantages. Both methods have their advantages. So pick what's right for your project. I'm going to continue working with this since I've already got it built. I mean, I could just uncomment this, but well, it's gone now. So, and we can make this a script, right? Because now that we've got object sensor, we just need to say, well, let's set up collision first. With object sensor, if place meeting XY object target dummy, show message, hit the pig. We'll just make sure that works. Boom, hit the pig. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this method as one other thing you might be noticing. The collision mask is just hanging out there, right? It's just sitting on top of him, blocking the pig's eyes from the violence. But we're not getting that message over and over again. Again, we're only checking collisions in this frame when layer timer is equal to 10. That's the only time this code gets ran. It's the only possible time we could be hitting the pig. So you don't have to worry about it hitting multiple times, which is really nice. But let's say we do want it to hit multiple times. How would we do that? Let's say we want it, as long as we're in this frame, we want it to be checking collision, which is reasonable. So we're going to move this and just leave this as our animation management switch statement. And then we'll put down here that if image index is equal to 1, then we're going to do this. So now we're going to get into a more complicated management of hit detection for a melee attack. Because this is common, right? You don't necessarily want your attack to hit for one frame and one frame alone. So you want to give yourself a little bit of leeway. So if this guy's moving into your sword, you can still hit him even if you attacked a little early. So hit the pig. Okay, now we're getting spammed with the message. Again, it's only a few times because the attack only lasts for 5 frames, so we got the message 5 times. But we also don't want the stab to hit the pig more than 5 times, right? Or more than once. Like it's one stab, it should hit the pig once, and that's it. So there's a lot of ways to approach this, and I'm sure you've seen some in tutorials. It's like, oh, just make the pig invincible, and now he can't get hit by by this. But then it's like, well, how long does this last? How long does invincibility last? I just don't want this to hit the pig again, right? So with that in mind, we typically have a way of keeping track of what you've hit, right? So we're going to go into Object Player's Create Event, and we're going to give him a hit list. And it's going to be an array, and it's going to be empty. So we're going to, when we hit something, we're going to add it to that hit list, and if we've already hit that thing, we don't want to hit it again. So let's do that. So we're starting a new stab, so I'm going to empty the hit list. On enter, so hit list equals empty array. And then when we hit something, we need to get the ID, so let's change this to a instance place, or instance meeting, or instance place. Yeah, instance place. Okay, so we got XY let's capture the instance ID that's returned. And then we could say if ID does not equal no one, then we hit something. We're going to need to do a little bit more. So we hit the pig, and then we want to add that pig to our hit list. Array push. Okay, so problem. Hit list is not on object sensor. It's on object player. So we need to use other to get us out of the with. And then the value is going to be ID, which is our pig. So that adds another element, right? Now we've added this ID to our hit list, but we're not checking to see if we've already hit this guy yet. So we need to see if not only does that ID does not equal none, we want to make sure that that ID does not exist on our hit list. And now here's more fun stuff. How do we know if something's in an array? So array, find it. And so if this were a DS list, right? DS list, find index, boom. You say find index. Is it there? No, return -1. Otherwise, return the index. Very simple. But array find index doesn't exist. I mean, it exists. Let's say helpful scripts, array extensions, array find index. I'll just bring this in here. Boom. And this is going to do the same thing. Can't find it, return -1. Found it, put it in, give us the index back. So we could say ID not equal no one and array find index of other dot hit list and ID does not -1. So, or no, we want it to be equal to -1. We didn't find it, good. We hit something and we didn't find it, hit it. Let's see if that works. One message, there we go. Hit it again, boom, one message. All right, so we could dig into this all day. Another problem that we have right now is instance place only hits 1. So if we had like 3 pigs stacked on top of each other, GameMaker would pick one of those 3 pigs and hurt it. So we could go to instance place list, which returns a, like you have to have a DS list that does that. Man, I hate DS lists. Ever since we got array instructs, I hate DS everything. So again, I have removed it. And we've got instance place array, which yes, it uses DS list because I have to for instance place, but at least you don't have to destroy it yourself. So you don't have to worry about cleaning it up. So let's do that. Instance place list, it's going to return an array of IDs, ID array, and let's see, oh, instance place array. What else do we have to do? X, Y, object, don't care about ordered. And so we're going to say if array length, well, here's what we're going to do. We don't need to do this anymore. We're just going to say for I equals 0, I is less than array length, ID array, I plus plus. There. So now if we didn't get anything, this array will be empty, and 0 is not less than 0, so we won't execute this code. Great. So then we just have to say, hey, find the index of ID array sub 1 or sub I, then hit that pig. So let's go into our room. Let's go into our room. Let's add a couple more pigs. Get them all slightly off center. So Now, in theory, we should see the message 3 times. 1, and it broke. Cool. I must have forgot one of our IDs. Ah, yeah, here we go. There we go. ID, not AD. Okay, anything else? Okay, no, I think that looks good. Run in debug mode just in case. 1, 2, 3. Boom. And we can hit them again. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So now we can hit multiple targets all stacked on top of each other, and it's no big deal. It is a lot of code, but this is something you can easily functionize. Now, I could do that right now, absolutely. I'm not going to because this spacing's a little off. Because I like to wait until the first time I copy and paste something before I turn it into a function. So if I create another attack animation and I end up copying and pasting this entire block of code, but then I change like this and this and this, all of what changed, because whatever changes is going to tell you what my arguments need to be, right? So write everything twice. There's two methods of programming. Here, let me throw a little comment in here. Well, no, that's a very blanketed statement. There's two kind of principles I like to live by, or that you'll often hear. How about that? You often hear when talking about programming. Dry programming, which stands for don't repeat yourself. But I prefer wet programming, which is write everything twice. So make sure that you are repeating yourself before you make it so you don't have to repeat yourself, if that makes any sense. If you try and preemptively guess that this is going to be necessary to be used somewhere else, you may end up making it much more robust and reusable than you ever really need it to be. So don't be afraid to just copy paste, figure out what things change. That's going to inform your arguments and things that you need to make kind of customizable and how you reuse it before you go ham on trying to make it super reusable and super flexible. So there we go. That's our basic attack. We're hitting lots of enemies. It's great. But we're just hitting them, right? We're just showing a message. That's not really hitting the pig, right? Presumably, these pigs have hit points, and the sword deals damage, the stab deals damage, and you have to take down the hit points before they die, right? So what you typically see in tutorials and maybe even live projects, but you've probably done something like this. Oh, I hit it. Let's hold on. Let me fix this real fast. I hate having all these like array subindexes everywhere. We're gonna call this our target. Our tar equals that. Target to our hit list. Perfect. All right. So we're going to hit this guy, and what you normally see is like tar.hp minus equals, the damage of this stab attack. This is not good for a number of reasons. Like, okay, when are you going to check if the enemy's HP is down to 0, right? Like now it's like, okay, now it's target HP is minus equals 5, and if tar.hp is less than 0, then he should be dead, which you could just do like an instance destroy or whatever. But no, now it's got to be tar or instance destroy tar. This is going to get complicated really fast. you shouldn't be doing this in your attack state, right? Because it gets even more complicated. You can say, well, what if the pig has invulnerability frames? You just hit him, or he got hit by something else, and you can't just double down on the damage and keep him stun locked. He's got invincibility frames. So now you got to say, okay, if tar.is invincible, whatever, invincible, I hate that word. I use it all the time in game projects, and I never spell it correctly. I mean, I guess I just did, but I always have to think about it. So if it's invincible, then, well, we can't do anything. So we're just going to continue the for loop. You can see how this, as your game got more complicated with collision detection and different teams of different enemy, players and enemies, stuff like that, that it's just going to get super complicated. And we're in an attack state. This should not be the responsibility of your attack state. So how do you handle this? Another principle I kind of live by is objects don't get to quote unquote touch other objects. They don't get to go in and manipulate their HP. I don't get to say, hey, I hit you, your H speed or whatever is now equal to -3 because I'm pushing you back. You don't get to say your X is now my X. Right. I don't like when I see an object going in and specifically setting variables on other objects, because this takes control away from that object's over its own behavior, right? You might move this target into a wall, or you might be stomping over some H speed that's really important to whatever state it's in right now. And again, you might be reducing its HP below 0, but it could be invincible. So lots of reasons not to do this. So let's do it the right way. To do this, the idea in all of these scenarios that I've talked about, knockback, moving an X and Y, and I think this applies to even things like moving platforms and stuff like that, where the platform is moving the player. You merely suggest to the object that, hey, I hit you for this much. Just letting you know. If you need to do something about that, do something about it. But you just you send a message. You tell the object what you think you did to them, and they decide whether you actually did that and what that means if you did. So we need to set up a little system for this. So I'm going to go back into Object Player, because that's a parent of our Object Target Dummy, and this is something the player would often need, or likely need as well. And we're going to say, we're going to call this our damage inbox. And it's just going to be an array. And then we're going to need a function to handle our damage inbox. So we're going to call it handle damage. And what we're going to do is we're going to loop through our inbox. 0, I is less than array length, damage inbox, I plus plus. And we're going to do something here. That's going to be our handle damage. And once we've looped through our damage inbox, we've handled all of the damage. So we can just empty that array. We can just knock it out, because we've gone through our inbox. There's nothing in the inbox anymore. So we don't need this anymore. So what is damage? What is inside of this damage inbox? It can be anything, like literally anything you want. And you can put so much information in there that that can handle anything. So let's start super simple. Of course. Okay. Let's go back over to our state. So let's say target dot or array push And there's actually another thing. Let's make another function real fast. On object, man. I just wish Control T would do the horizontal. Control Tab would do the horizontal as well as the vertical. Okay, let's make one more function here. So we're going to say add damage. So this is going to submit a message of you've been damaged. So we're going to need an argument. That's going to be damage. And we're going to array push onto our damage inbox the damage, right? So I like how this reads more. It lets me be in charge of my own damage inbox and what it means for something to be damage, which we're going to start simple. And we're just going to say it's our damage amount. So we're going to say tar.addDamage, and our damage amount per stab is 5. Or we could even do just like a little irandom range. So we got some randomness in here, and we'll say 3 to 5. Okay, so we're adding damage. Great. Let's. Doesn't do anything though. I don't think we have even hit points in here right now. So let's give ourselves some hit points. Let's say 10. And in case we want to do a health bar or something to show this, or draw that out at least. There's our hit points and our max hit points. So here we go. Now we can handle damage. We know that everything in our damage inbox is just a number. That can get complicated, and will probably complicate it at least a little bit in a second. But for right now, we're just going to say hit points minus equals our damage inbox sub I. So there's our damage. In fact, just because I know we're going to need to do this in a second, and damage equals damage with I. Too many semicolons. Nice damage. There we go. So there we go. Now we've got a function to handle our damage and add damage. So we can go into our step event and determine when we want to do this. And that means that I can say we're going to handle damage, and then I can say if my HP, hit points, is less than or equal to 0, then I can say layer.state switch to player dead or whatever, player state dead. That state doesn't exist right now, but that's how we could do that. We could also say, handle damage. Check this out. What's the difference between taking fatal damage and taking a little bit of damage? So let's say, what if handle damage returned how much damage you took? So far, total damage equals handle damage. And if total damage, if hit points are less than 0, you're dead. Else, if total damage is greater than, let's say, half my HP, so hit points max divided by 2, then we go layer state switch player get wrecked, just like a huge hit react. Player state wrecked, and else, it's just a minor hit react. Player dot state switch player state hit react. Right. So now we can do all this sort of stuff. So let's just roll back to handle damage and say we want to return the total damage. So let's say bar total damage equals 0. Hit points minus equals damage. Total damage plus equals damage. And then we're going to return total damage. There we go. So now handle damage is going to tell us what our total damage is. Are we dead? Go to player state dead. Is our total damage greater than half our max hit points? And we go wrecked. And then if our otherwise, we just kind of, flinch. So that's a lot of things you can do for handling damage. And you can make this even a script, a little state helper, so that you can just do like, let's like if you followed kind of the state pattern, you get a lot of this over and over again, and we can copy and paste that into a function that's like, create script, let's do player state check damage. It's a state helper, but I'm not going to worry too much about the name. So we'll jump over here, cut that, paste there. And now my state reads a little bit better. There. So now if I need to check damage here or in their stab state or their air state, then I can. So that actually brings a good point. What if, and this is kind of weird, but bear with me, what if in my stab state, I couldn't be dealt damage? Or at least I can't take fatal damage or react to damage until I'm out of that state. So if, as long as I don't put player state check damage in here, I won't take damage, I won't react to damage, there's nothing that can happen to me while I am in this state. So that makes me invincible. Then I have two options. So if that's not there, I'm invincible while I'm in my stab state. So then I have two options. Do I still take all the damage that was dealt to me while I was in the stab state once I'm done stabbing? Or was the stab state truly invincible and I just ignore all the damage I took during that time? If it's the former, if we are going to take that damage as soon as we get back to another state, we don't need to do anything. It's all in our inbox, and as soon as we go back to our idle state, we're going to check the inbox and we're going to react to it. However, if we want to make him truly invincible, we can come down here to the exit event and just say, yeah, I don't care. Your damage inbox is empty now. We're just going to knock it out because any damage you took during this state, we're going to ignore. Now you're invincible. You cannot take damage while in your stab state. So that's an easy way to make a single state invincible. Don't check for damage, empty out the inbox when you're done, and you're invincible. One other thing. When we are checking for damage, if you're going to die, well, you should probably lock that so that you can't switch to another state if you're supposed to be dead. Just good habit. Okay, so we're not actually using this yet, right? The pig can't attack the player, and we've only done this in the player, right? So the pig is going to be slightly different, which is why I said player state check damage. So we're going to grab this, and we're going to go to pig state idle, because that's all he really sits in and does. And we're going to say, we're just going to copy and paste this for right now. So pig is also a child of, or the same as player. So we still have this handle damage function we have access to, and we can get our total damage. And if our hit points are less than 0, we're just going to destroy him. And then else, we're just going to have a single else here. We're going to go to layer state switch, pig state wrecked. And we don't really use our total damage, so we don't need that now. So now, unless I'm forgetting something, which I probably am, we should be able to damage and kill our pigs. And so here's our state wrecked. So for 30 frames, he's going to be in this state, and he's not taking damage. So let's make him invincible during this state. So we'll just knock out his damage inbox so that if you stab over and over again while it's reacting to that hit, it's not going to deal more and more damage. Oh, I did forget some stuff. What'd I do? Oh, right. Wow, it's been a while since I've ran, I guess. Okay, layer state switch. Oh, right. Yeah, we don't actually have any of these, so we're going to ignore this for now. These were just examples. All right, we're back. Okay, so they are already taking damage. That's not good. How did that happen? Let's go back to pig, stay idle, handle damage if hit points is less than or equal to 0. Oh, well, yes. We do need this, don't we? Else, if damage is greater than 0, so we actually took damage, that's important, then, so that means our other logic probably would have the exact same problem. We only want to switch to the rec state if they're taking damage. Okay, so there we are. Now they're just standing there. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so they're all dead. But we can't really tell, like, a lot of things. A lot of things looked weird. First off, our sensor's still there. That's kind of annoying. So we're just going to click visible off so we can actually see him stab it. And we have no feedback of how much damage we did, right? That's really annoying. You always want to know how much damage you did, either with a hit point bar or a lot of RPGs just pop numbers up. Let's do that. Let's pop some numbers up. That's always a lot of fun. So let's create an object. It's going to be object damage text or pop up. And we're going to make it create event, and it's going to pick a speed like, and yeah, I'm just going to use the built-in variables for this because we're not going to be doing any movement or collision. We're just animating it, right? I can even use gravity. Equals like 0.2, speed equals, I don't know, 3. We'll definitely change these numbers once we get these in. And direction is going to be a random range between, let's do like 80 and 110 and 100. So just 10 degrees left or right of 90. And then we're going to need our amount, which is going to be 0 by default. We'll set that, and then we're just going to say draw and draw text x, y amount, and then we need a little timer, or we could just set an alarm. Alarms are easy, right? Alarm 0 equals 1 second, and then add alarm 0, instance destroy. Okay, so now when we go back to our object player, we can say, okay, we've looped through, you took tons of damage from like 18 different sources, right? You're getting you're in a single frame, you were standing in lava, something stabbed you, a bomb exploded next to you, and like 10 things happened that all dealt damage to you. So instead of 10 damage pop-ups, which we could do if we put the pop-ups right here inside the for loop, but if we put it outside, we can use total damage and have a single pop-up that's a lot easier to read. But it depends on your game fill, whether you want to do a billion pop-ups all at once or if you just want to do the one. There's really no way for, there aren't really multiple damage sources right now, so it wouldn't do us much good to put it in the for loop to demonstrate the difference, but it's possible. So let's create an instance. Equals, ooh, you know what? There's a new feature in GameMaker that I haven't used yet. Let's use that. That'll be fun. So a little bit of experimentation here. I've literally never tried this before. So we're going to do instance create depth. We're going to say at our x, at our y, our depth -1 because we want the thing to be on top. And we're going to say object damage pop-up and then a var struct, which you can like add a struct, and we're going to put that amount variable right here. And we're going to say it's damage. So what this should do is now instead of having to capture this var of the ID, the instance created, and then saying var, instance dot amount equals damage, I should be able to go in here and I think I can even just get rid of this. Let's find out. What? Well, that's a weird spot for it to... Okay, so it doesn't like that. So maybe this doesn't work quite the way I was hoping. Let's look at the documentation. It's always a good thing to do when something doesn't work the way you expected. Let's look at it together. Okay, optional struct. The last argument of our struct is optional and takes a struct containing additional variables for the new instance. Variable from the struct are applied to the new instance before its create event, so it's a good thing we didn't define it, but after its variable definitions. This means that the values from the struct are readable in the create event of the new instance. Okay, values applied to the new instance through the struct can be of any type. Note, variables from the struct are shallow copied to the new instance, meaning any arrays, structs, and other resources are copied by reference and not duplicated. It makes sense. But they don't give us a nice... Oh yeah, so there's an example. So speed, direction are set. And shoot speed. It's interesting that the damage doesn't work. I wonder if there's something else going on, because that seems like it should work. So since it's not working, we're going to do this the old-fashioned way, and if it still doesn't work, then we're going to assume this is me being silly. That's unfortunate, but amount equals damage. Like I'm not... Oh, no, I am an idiot. I am an idiot. Shout me out in the comments if you saw that before I did. Okay, there we go. That should work. Okay, same problem as the last time we did this. We only want to do this if total damage is greater than 0. Wonderful. And it is also really weak. There's some weak numbers there, right? So let's go back into our damage pop-up and let's keep that speed up. Boom. Okay, that might be a bit intense, but boom. So now we got some random numbers popping up. 10 was a bit much, and the color's boring. So let's make this really cool. Let's just keep going. draw set color equals, let's make it blink. Blinking's cool. So we'll say if alarm 0 mod 2 equals 0. Let's do a few more frames so it's not quite so blinky. Then we'll say we want to flip the color. It's going to be the easiest way to do that. Probably need to keep track of our current color. Let's just do this. Color equals C white and C red. So we're going to have a blink between those two. And then color equals 0. So I'm going to just flip cur color every 4 steps equals not cur color. And then draw set color, colors, did I call it colors? See, this is why you always pluralize your arrays. Colors, cur color, subcurl color, and then we'll just set this back to C white afterwards so it doesn't affect other things. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Now we're just having fun. Oh, broke something. Did I spell it wrong? Or did I not initialize it? Yeah, curcol. Oh, curcol, of course. There we go. Now we got a little blinky damage numbers. So I mentioned a while ago that the thing you send in your when you deal damage can be very complicated. And because the game we have right now isn't very complicated, it's kind of difficult to explain how you can complicate it. So let's just explore it a little without really being able to demonstrate it, unfortunately. But I think you'll get the idea. So when we're dealing damage, right now we're just adding a random range. But what we could do is we could make this a struct. And this struct is always going to have to follow the same format for whatever a message should be, a damage message. So we're going to have our damage value. That's going to be our iRandom range. So what else would we want to put in here? Well, think of all the different properties an attack can have in a game, right? It could be a type of piercing, or armor piercing, or incendiary, or all sorts of options. It could have an element that's like fire. It could have a specific hit spark, a specific animation or hit reaction that that needs to be attached to the target that got hit. And so you can't just place it, you want them to place it when they take that damage. So you could have hit spark is object, hit spark large, right? Another thing that can be useful is source. Who hit me? Like, that's important. Like, that person might be on my team and I just ignore all this damage. That person might, I might need to respond to, this type of enemy can't hit me. I take less damage from evil enemies, right? So if I put in here other.id, so I have the source of who hit me, now I can communicate all sorts of things, right? So then I'm going to copy and paste this because we're going to need to handle that in here. So handle damage. When we add damage, I need a little note here that's like, what is damage? So damage is always going to be a source, which we expect to be an ID, damage which we expect to be a number, type, which is going to be a string type or an enum, whatever you want to do. Same with element. So we're kind of describing when you call add damage, the damage struct should match this hit spark object. Okay, so that's kind of what we're expecting. So that means when we get into here into handle damage and we're looping through this, it's not just like damage, right? This is now kind of our structure of what our damage is. And then our damage is struct.damage. And in this way, we can do all sorts of things. It's like, struct if, struct dot source dot team equals my team, then continue. Now I don't have to check if that, I took damage from my own team back where I'm doing the attack. Now I don't have to say, oh, if this person is on my team, don't hit them and add them to my hit list, ignore them. I can just hit everybody and let them determine whether they take damage from my attacks or not in their own handle damage script. What's cool about this is since it's a method on this object, I could go into object target dummy and change what they do when they handle damage. Maybe it stores how much damage you're dealing and keeps track of it over time so it can give you a DPS readout because it's a target dummy and you're supposed to be testing out attacks and weapon and armor configurations. So it can do basically the same thing, but you can override it and have it do its own thing that's different from object player. In fact, let's do that real fast just to kind of show you. So object dummy, go into the create, it's inheriting its create event. So we're just going to do handle damage again. It's going to do basically the same thing, which again, you could make its own big function, but now I'm going to have overall damage equals 0. And then I can just say overall damage equals total damage, or plus equals total damage. There. Now the target dummy is doing something slightly different from the player by keeping track of overall damage. Is there a reason we wouldn't want the player to keep track of their overall damage? No. I mean, we could have put this in the player as well, but that's just an example that we can now overwrite what handle damage does for a specific object now that we've got this system set up, and you are free to do whatever you want with it for that object. It's not locked in stone. So I think that was pretty much all I wanted to cover. This video was a bit longer than I expected, but hopefully you found it useful. And if you did, go use it and go make something awesome. Thanks for watching.